Hi everyone, Mrs. Lansdell here. How are you guys? What a lovely day it is today, isn't it? So I was thinking, I listened to Miss Jen read her book about Mr. Chatterbox, and I thought, oh, I had forgotten all about the Mr. Men books. Miss Jen grew up in Canada, and they had the Mr. Men books. I grew up in England, and they too had the Mr. Men books. So I dug through my collection, and I found Mr. Chatterbox. And Miss Jen's right, isn't the back just wonderful? It's got pictures of all the different Mr. Men, and there's Miss as well. There are lots of Miss people as well. I wonder if there's a Miss in here. Oh, this is all the Mr. Men. There's a whole new series, a book you can get, and which show all the Miss people on there as well. So my author is Roger Hargreaves. So let's see what happens to Mr. Chatterbox, shall we? Here we go. Mr. Chatterbox was one of those people who simply could not stop talking. He used to talk to anybody and everybody about anything and everything, going on and on and on. And here's this poor worm listening to Mr. Chatterbox. And on and on and on. Look, it was daytime here with the sun, and he's been speaking so long, it's now nighttime with the moon. And on and on and on. And look, the sun's rising again. He's been talking so long. And when he didn't have anybody else to talk to, he used to talk to himself. Good morning, Mr. Chatterbox, he used to say to himself. Good morning to you, he used to reply to himself. Nice day, isn't it? Yes, it is for the time of year. And so on, and so on, and so on. He lived in a box-shaped house in a village, Chatterbox Cottage. There's his house. I like the bright yellow door he's got. One morning, the postman arrived with a letter for him. Morning, Mr. Chatterbox, said the postman. Ah, good morning to you, postman, replied Mr. Chatterbox. Although, as I was saying to myself only yesterday, or was it the day before? I forget. However, it's not quite so good a morning in my opinion, but I might be wrong, although I'm not very often wrong, as was the other day, Monday, I think it was, or perhaps it was Tuesday, but never mind, because it's quite a good morning, don't you agree? Yes, of course you do, because that's what you said to me in the first place, and he went on and on and on all morning, and the poor postman was late delivering all his letters. He's kind of got a sad face on because he's late delivering his letters. That afternoon, Mr. Chatterbox went into the hat shop in the village. Hello, Mr. Bowler, he said to the man who owned the hat shop. Do you think if it's possible that I could buy, if it's not too expensive, but I'm sure it won't be, a new hat because, would you believe it? Yes, of course you would. But anyway, as I was saying, my present hat, the one on my head, as you can see, is getting, how can I put it, a little too old because I've had it for, let me see now, it must be, 10 years. No, I tell a lie, it can't be that long. Or can it? Well, yes, it could be. But on the other hand, and he went on and on and on, all afternoon and half the night, long after Mr. Bowler should have shut up shop and gone home. And look, Mr. Bowler looks a little sad. He's late going home for his dinner. Eventually, Mr. Bowler managed to get a word in edgeways, or was it sideways, and he promised to order a new hat for Mr. Chatterbox. Then he pushed Mr. Chatterbox out of his shop, still talking, of course, and went home for his supper, which was cold, of course, because Mrs. Bowler had cooked it for him hours ago. And while he ate, he thought. Exactly 1 week later, the new hat for Mr. Chatterbox arrived in a smart red hat box. The postman delivered it to Mr. Bowler's shop. At last, said Mr. Bowler, heaving a sigh of relief. I think this hat is going to be the answer to the problem of Mr. Chatterbox talking so much. I wish it could be, said the postman. But how can it? Because, replied Mr. Bowler, this hat is a magic hat. Oh, replied the postman, who didn't quite understand. I wonder what sort of magic it's going to have. That same afternoon, Mr. Bowler took the new hat round to Chatterbox Cottage. Oh, goody, said Mr. Chatterbox, seizing the hat box and opening it. It's my new hat, my lovely new hat. I couldn't wait for it to arrive. In fact, I got up early this morning because, aren't I silly? I just knew, I don't know how, but I really knew, that today would be the day. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. And it's here, and here's my hat. And oh, isn't it beautiful? I can't wait to try it on, and I do so hope it suits me. Do you think it will? Yes, of course you do, and... Why don't you try it on? Said Mr. Bowler, grinning. With a smile there. Try it on? Yes, of course I must try it on. How silly of me to stand here chattering on when I haven't tried it on yet. So yes, I will absolutely, definitely try it on straight away. Because, as I said, it's silly just to talk about trying it on and then not try it on, isn't it? And so he took the hat out of the hat box and put it on. It was a beautiful hat. Do you see? It's a lovely, beautiful orange hat. I say, he said, I must say, I really must, that this hat is, yes, it really is, to say the least, one of the better hats that I have ever seen in my life. And in my life, I must say, I have seen some hats, and furthermore. But whilst he was talking, a funny thing was happening. The more words that came out of Mr. Chatterbox's mouth, the larger his hat became. The more Mr. Chatterbox talked, the more the hat grew and grew. Let's look at the size of it before. You see it's a little bit smaller? And now it's got a much bigger hat. Oh my goodness. Mr. Chatterbox has disappeared under it. Mr. Chatterbox kept on talking and the hat kept on growing. I can't see anything, he said. 1 minute I was standing here looking at my new hat in the mirror, and now all of a sudden, without any warning, taking me all unawares, just like that. The hat grew down to his feet and Mr. Chatterbox stopped talking. Oh my goodness, look at the size of his hat. And as soon as he stopped talking, the hat grew smaller and smaller until it was the same size of when he'd first tried it on. Mr. Bowler had gone when Mr. Chatterbox couldn't see him. And now he was walking back to his shop. My special magic hat really works, he chuckled. So maybe Mr. Chatterbox won't be saying so much. The following day, Mr. Chatterbox was out for a walk when he met the postman in the village. Hello, postman, he said. I say, do you like my new hat? Have you ever seen such a fine hat? I'm sure you never have. What a hat, and... But do you know what was happening? You do, don't you? What's going to happen to his hat? That's right, it's going to get bigger. Let's see. The hat grew and grew and grew, the more Mr. Chatterbox talked. Now, I know what Mr. Bowler meant by a magic hat, chuckled the postman. And he went on his way, leaving poor Mr. Chatterbox speechless. He thought, thinking. Not talking, thinking. He's not able to talk, his hat's covering his head. And do you know something? That hat taught Mr. Chatterbox his lesson. And these days, he doesn't talk half as much as he used to, or even a quarter as much. And you know the reason for that, don't you? Yes, of course you do. But, look, here's the worm and the hat's smaller. It's saying, keep it under your hat. So don't tell anyone that you know the reason why he doesn't talk so much is because the hat just got bigger and bigger. Oh, Mr. Chatterbox certainly had a lot to say, didn't he? Oh my goodness. It was exhausting all his friends, I think, so they found a way just to quieten him a little bit. They didn't want to totally make him quiet, but just a little bit. I hope you enjoyed that story, my friends. Miss Jen and I will have to see if we've got any more in the series of like Mr. Chatterbox and Mr. Tickle. Enjoy your day. Miss you guys. Bye.